kind of wish that I would have been more of an independent thinker when I did that. But I was for this project, and independent thinking was not allowed. You get a C. It was the only time I got a C in that whole program. Isn't that something? And then I had to take one more class, too, that same semester as I was finishing up my master's program. To take a political science class. And it just so happened that the top level class of the other program that I had left, the National Security Studies master's program, that their top level class was meeting at a time where I could go. And so I signed up for that, sort of be a fly on the wall. You know, I'm not in their program, but it's a political science class, so I can count those credits toward my social science master's. Now, I said this is the top level class. This was really heavy. This was really serious. It was at literally the top floor of a big building with, you know, glass all around us and, you know, overlooking this boardroom setting and all the students sitting around. So they're sort of, you know, giving us this feeling like you have now reached the ivory tower experience here. And I'm not even in the program. I don't know how they let me into the class, but here we are discussing things. And I remember one discussion was very interesting. They asked the question, they posed the question. By the way, all the students around this table are the ones who are going to now go and work for the Defense Department, the FBI, CIA, the think tanks, the American Enterprise Institute, all these different groups. And so they're asked a very important question. If there happened to be a major attack, some sort of terrorist event in Manhattan where there was a nuclear attack, what would happen? What would you propose we do as a country, as a government? You're the future policymakers of America. What happens? I'm sitting here listening as they go around the room, and I'm the last one on the line, and I'm hearing full-scale invasion of, you know, Iran, or targeted first strikes of such and such a place, or, you know, special forces invasion over in this area, or just carpet bomb Mecca and Medina, you know, all these different answers. And it gets to me, and I said, the first thing I would do is find out who did it. Which I thought was a reasonable answer, but they all looked, and then I said, and maybe ask questions about whether American foreign policy may actually stir up resentment and anger. And this is not to justify it, of course, but you know, you want to start to say, hey, let's re-examine our own policies as well. No, you don't do that. Oh man, that really puts you way out there. And so again, all the criticism came at that point because you just went way outside the box, and you're not allowed to say that. And so that wasn't accepted. After class, some of them were coming up to me still, just like, this one guy, he was insisting that in America we need a domestic security force, we need to have a neo-empire, we need to, in his words, exploit the weak for our own benefit. I'm not making this up. Maybe they're a little bit more honest and blunt at the level here, and not in the publications where it's more sort of hidden in intellectual jargon. But this guy was really insistent on this. And I said, hey, are you saying like we should have a tyranny? Like pretty much in a word? And he said, yes. I said, you don't believe in, you know, the Bill of Rights and limited government and these ideas of freedom? Well, no, that's, he said that could work. I mean, that's the ideal, but it just won't work. And so we need to have, in his words, a tyranny. And so this is the mindset. So I've told you these stories so you can see how thought can collect around a certain way of thinking, no matter the department. In this department, it was that way of thinking. Maybe in another department, it would be a different wing of the political spectrum over here. And the whole system is a system of keeping thought within the boundaries that are set by the opinion makers. And you heard from the congressional investigation, the foundations, the elite of society can influence opinion, can influence thought inordinately, and they can take control of this sort of thing. Now, you might remember from session 1 to review about Prussianization of American schooling, which was just Jesuit education to the core, right? We looked at that as an economic force, and a lot of people look back at that as an industrial era phenomenon. You know, it was way back then that they did that, but today, you know, schools are really designed to help children to become the, you know, best and brightest that they can be. That's what we are aiming for, and certainly there are a lot of people in education who are aiming for that. Very few people align with the agendas of these architects of American schooling. Most people in schooling are well-intentioned. I certainly was, and most of the people I knew, but it's still a toxic system in and of itself. It was conceived in iniquity, and you can try your best within this system, but you're still not going to be able to overthrow the system as one individual in the system. But nonetheless, it is happening today as well. This idea of creating a population of human resources, if you will. I want you to meet Mark Tucker. Mark Tucker is a very important individual in modern times because in 1992, Bill Clinton was elected the President of the United States. And at that time, Mark Tucker was formulating some theories about how to really move American schooling forward. And when the people he favored were elected, Bill and Hillary Clinton, he wrote a letter to Hillary Clinton in 1992. This letter has gone viral. It was published in the Congressional Record, and people have analyzed it. It's the famous letter to Hillary Clinton, okay? But what people often don't talk about is he writes in the letter that he had just been having conversations with David Rockefeller and other opinion makers. So after he comes out of these conversations about American schooling, here's what he says in his letter to Hillary Clinton. He says, "We think the great opportunity you have is to remold the entire American system for," guess what? Human resources. Human resources development. Now, what does that mean, human resources? If you talk in economic terms, there are a lot of resources in society, right? There are natural resources. There's financial capital, but there's also human resources. It is a human being reduced to an economic unit, an economic function, the human being as a resource. So we're crafting the whole system around the student serving in the economy in a way that will, well, as he says in the quote, he says at the end, it needs to be a system driven by client needs. Now, reading in the middle of the quotation as well, he says, what is essential is that we create a seamless web that literally extends from cradle to grave and is the same system for everyone. Now, I've heard people make commentaries about, right, can you imagine, governmental intervention in our lives from cradle to grave? And they usually use this in a negative sort of way of using the phrase. But he's saying, no, from cradle to grave. This is what we want. And the client needs meaning the people who will do the hiring, they need their human resources built and produced in a certain way. So even though it's not the industrial system anymore, today we have an economy that's dependent upon these people coming in and being good employees. He goes on to praise the German system in his letter. So this is a Prussianization of 20th century, the information age. He says the whole national schooling needs to be standardized and everybody needs to be tested by the standards, and teachers should be trained according to these standards. The goal is to not help them become more human, more self-made, more initiative-driven, more creative, to come up with their own way. No, human resources. A fully integrated national system. By the way, if you go all the way back to 1919, 95% of the education world was teachers. 95% of the education employees were teachers. Presently, it's less than 50%. So you have a lot of administrative layers in this bureaucracy forming this system that he is dreaming of. Now, if you take a look at Karen Arnold, she wrote an interesting book called Lives of Promise. What happens to the valedictorians of America? Because we say, we tell kids, succeed in school and you will be something great in your life. Well, she actually did a study of the people who were the best at school. You would think these are going to be the great innovators, right? The great entrepreneurs, the dreamers, the people that come up with new ideas, who really succeed in life in ways that, wow, they really did something special and they really stand out from the crowd and they're serving God or blessing others or coming up with interesting things more than those around them. Not so. The valedictorians in her study, and by the way, they're not bad people. They're really good at school and they get good jobs. That was the results of her findings. They get good jobs. They serve in that system. They become important resources, human resources in the system, but they're not the ones to look for creative breakthroughs in entrepreneurship or becoming independent-minded leaders. And this isn't a criticism of people who do well in school, right? I got the 3.5, which is not valedictorian, but which is a decent GPA. But that GPA and that schooling experience did not give me what I needed to succeed in life. That came later. That came outside of school. And yes, of course, there are some innovators and entrepreneurs and discoverers who happened also to get diplomas and degrees. But maybe their unique and successful life came not because of schooling, but in spite of schooling. You rarely hear from successful people, I credit my success and genius in life to the fact that I had to sit in a desk all day, full-time, almost year-round for 13 years. That's what I credit my greatness to. I mean, people don't say that. I mean, even somebody like Ben Carson, who did go through lots of schooling, had to get the degrees, right? What does he credit his success to as the most prominent neurosurgeon in the world? It was what his mother did in the home, outside of the school hours. She would require him to read a book, write a book report on it, and submit it to her. She would mark it up even though she didn't even know what she was doing. And she would say, do it again. You need to